I still remember the morning like it was etched into my soul. The sun was just beginning to spill golden light across our quiet street, birds singing as if they knew something monumental was about to happen. I was 17, fresh out of high school, my mind buzzing with the anticipation of graduation and the uncertain excitement of the future. But nothing had prepared me for the sight in our driveway that morning. A sleek black SUV, its polished surface gleaming, a big red bow tied neatly on the hood. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice trembling. She smiled, her eyes shining with the kind of pride and warmth that made the years of homework struggles, failed experiments, and late-night anxieties worth it. "I wanted you to have something special," she said softly, taking my hands in hers. "You've worked so hard, and I know how much you've dreamed. This isn't just a car, sweetheart. It's a symbol of how much I believe in you." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Grandma had always been my safe place, my secret ally in a family that sometimes felt suffocating. My parents were demanding, always comparing me to my sister, constantly reminding me to be more like her, more poised, more graceful, more perfect, but Grandma had seen me. She had recognized my dedication, my late nights, my sacrifices, and this gift was her way of saying, "You matter, you are enough." I ran my hands over the steering wheel, inhaling the faint new car scent, and promised her I would take care of it, that it would never leave my side. That car, that gift, was more than metal and leather. It was a tangible piece of my grandmother's love, a testament to my hard work, and a beacon of independence I had never known I could have. For a few blissful days, I basked in that glow. Driving down quiet streets, the windows rolled down, music playing softly, I felt invincible. For once, it wasn't my sister who got the attention. It wasn't my parents making me feel invisible. This was mine. I could taste the freedom, the sweet rush of validation, and I loved every second, and then it was gone. I remember walking into the living room and seeing my sister leaning casually against the SUV, keys in hand, her expression smugly satisfied. My stomach dropped, a sick, twisting weight that made my chest tight. What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Mom smiled, the kind of smile that pretends everything is ordinary, but carries an edge sharp enough to cut. "Oh, sweetie, we thought it would make more sense for your sister to have the SUV," she said, as if reading a grocery list aloud. "She needs it more for college, need. I felt the words reverberate in my skull like nails on a chalkboard. Grandma gave it to me. She said it was mine. I whispered, my throat dry and trembling. Dad shook his head, sighing in that way that conveyed disappointment. "We're just trying to do what's best for the family. You'll understand when you're older. But it's not fair." My voice cracked, and suddenly I was shouting, unable to stop the flood of hurt and betrayal. "Grandma gave it to me. She meant it for me. You can't just take it away." My sister shrugged, completely unbothered. "Well, I guess I'm lucky, huh?" Her smile was irritatingly casual, as if she had done nothing wrong, as if she hadn't just stolen the most precious thing I had ever received from someone who truly loved me. Grandma's face hovered in my mind, and I felt a pang of guilt and fear. I knew she would be disappointed, but I couldn't yet imagine the depth of her reaction. I wanted to run to her to beg her to understand, but I was frozen in shock, staring at the car that was no longer mine. I sat on my bed that night, staring at the ceiling, the taste of betrayal bitter in my mouth. How could the people who were supposed to love me most, my parents, my family, betray me so openly? I had been careful, obedient, always trying to meet their expectations, and this was the gratitude I received. And yet, beneath the hurt, beneath the fury, something else began to stir, a quiet fire in my chest. I wasn't sure what form it would take yet, but I knew this wasn't over. The SUV was gone, but the sense of injustice, the knowledge of who I was and who had wronged me, burned brighter than ever. I didn't know it then, but this moment, the stolen gift, the casual cruelty of my own family was the spark that would ignite a plan, a slow, sweet revenge that no one would see coming. Grandma's gift had been stolen, but they hadn't stolen my spirit, not yet. The days that followed were a strange mixture of silence and simmering anger. I moved through the house as if I were a ghost, passing my sister in the hallway without speaking, pretending not to notice her smug little smiles whenever she climbed into the SUV that should have been mine. My parents continued as if nothing had happened, dropping casual hints about responsibility and family priorities. As they sipped their morning coffee, while my heart pounded with the steady rhythm of betrayal, I avoided confrontation at first. I had learned long ago that anger often turned against me, that my parents had a way of twisting every outburst into proof that I was too sensitive or overreacting. So I bottled it all up, feeding it into a slow, deliberate fire. The SUV, which had been a symbol of freedom and love, became a symbol of injustice, a daily reminder that those who were supposed to nurture me had chosen favoritism over fairness. At school, I found a strange clarity in my solitude. Friends noticed my quiet intensity, the way I no longer craved their validation as much, the subtle confidence that had always been buried beneath my eagerness to please my family. Teachers started to comment on my focus, my ambition, my drive. I realized that while my parents had tried to steal my happiness, they had only made me more determined. Their favoritism was fuel, and I would use it. Grandma, as always, saw everything. She didn't need to ask. She had a way of noticing the things no one else did. One afternoon, as I sulked in the sunlit kitchen, she appeared beside me with a cup of tea. She didn't scold. She didn't try to mediate. She simply set the cup down, her fingers brushing mine lightly. "They can take things," she said softly, "but they can't take who you are." Her words were quiet, almost casual, but the weight of them hit me like a punch. She didn't need to explain. She knew my pain, and she knew that what they had done was not only unfair but cruel. The subtlety of her support was perfect. It was like she was giving me permission to feel the hurt, to feel the fire, without telling me what to do with it. That fire, I realized, was my weapon. I began planning, not recklessly, not in anger, but with a meticulous patience that would make their betrayal seem almost poetic when it came back to them. I started small, taking ownership of my achievements, making my presence in the family undeniable. I volunteered for projects, started excelling in ways they couldn't ignore, slowly building a reputation that wasn't tied to their approval. Every award I earned, every compliment I received, became a quiet strike against their favoritism. Meanwhile, my sister flaunted the SUV as if it were a crown she had won fairly. She bragged to her friends, posted pictures online, and laughed in ways that made my stomach twist. But I didn't rise to the bait. I let her enjoy her hollow victories. Every careless brag, every shallow smile, was a stone in the path I was quietly paving. Grandma continued her subtle guidance. Sometimes it was a word in passing, a look that conveyed understanding without judgment, a small gift or piece of advice tucked into a conversation that seemed casual but carried hidden weight. She would smile knowingly when my parents spoke of their fair decisions, and I began to realize she was quietly shaping the stage for the moment when the truth would finally come to light. I also learned patience. My anger was no longer raw. It was calculated, a slow, simmering current that shaped my actions without overtly exposing my plan. Every smile I gave my parents, every polite conversation with my sister, was a mask. Behind it, I was watching, learning, and waiting for the perfect moment. Late at night, I would sit by my window, looking out at the SUV parked in the driveway, imagining it back in my hands, imagining the shock on my parents' faces when the balance finally tipped. I wasn't seeking revenge through chaos or destruction. My goal was justice, poetic and undeniable. And the most satisfying part? I didn't have to say a word yet, because revenge, I realized, didn't need to be loud. It only needed to be inevitable. And somewhere deep down, I knew Grandma was already several steps ahead, quietly preparing the moment that would leave everyone speechless. She had given me more than a car. She had given me the tools to take back my dignity, and with her guidance, I would make sure it was done right. The SUV was gone, but my resolve had never been stronger. The first step in revenge, I realized, wasn't confrontation. It was subtlety. Like a shadow, I began moving through my family's world with quiet precision, letting my achievements, poise, and patience speak louder than anger ever could. If my parents had thought taking the SUV would diminish me, they were about to learn how wrong they were. I started with my independence. I found part-time work at a local bookstore, a place Grandma had recommended without my parents knowing. The work was steady, the pay modest, but it gave me a taste of freedom they had tried to deny me. Every paycheck I saved, every extra shift I took, became a symbol of self-reliance. I no longer had to rely on their validation, or their gifts, to prove my worth. Meanwhile, at school, I quietly let my talent shine. Teachers who had once overlooked me began noticing my dedication. I was chosen to lead projects, given opportunities to present my ideas in ways that highlighted my intelligence and creativity. Friends started commenting on how composed and confident I had become, and even my sister began to notice the subtle shift in family dynamics, though she pretended not to. But the most satisfying part of my revenge wasn't in trophies or recognition. It was in the small moments that revealed my parents' hypocrisy. During a family dinner, I casually mentioned a scholarship I had been awarded for my volunteer work. A scholarship my sister had never even considered applying for. My mother's smile faltered, my father's fork paused midair, and my sister looked at me with a mixture of annoyance and envy. I said nothing further, letting the silence speak volumes. Grandma, as always, was my quiet ally. She would drop hints that seemed innocent comments about fairness, stories from her own childhood, or sly encouragements that reminded me I wasn't alone. One afternoon, she took me aside in the kitchen. "You're stronger than they realize," she said softly, pressing a hand to my shoulder. "And you're smarter. Use it wisely. Revenge isn't about anger, it's about balance. Let them see who you truly are without lifting a finger against them directly." Her advice became my mantra. I learned to control my emotions, to conceal the storm inside while planting seeds of change that would sprout in the family's consciousness. I noticed how tense my parents became whenever I succeeded or received praise. Each subtle accomplishment was a mirror reflecting their favoritism back at them. They had tried to claim the SUV as a symbol of control, and now, unknowingly, they were participating in my slow reclamation of power. Even my sister began to falter, though she still clung to the SUV, as if it were a shield against my rising presence. Her friends would comment on my accomplishments in passing, and I could see her jealousy simmering beneath her carefully maintained smiles. She didn't yet understand that the SUV was meaningless without the respect and recognition. It was meant to symbolize something she had never earned. I also found small ways to expose the cracks in my parents' narrative. A careless comment from my mother about helping the children who need it most was echoed back to her during a casual family gathering, with Grandma's knowing smile in the background. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to outsiders, but the tension it created was deliciously effective. I wasn't attacking them. I was letting the truth reveal itself, letting the family see the unfairness for themselves. Evenings became my strategic thinking hours. I planned my next moves carefully, imagining scenarios in which my parents would be forced to confront the consequences of their favoritism. I envisioned family gatherings where truths would come to light, where the love and intention behind Grandma's original gift would shine through, untainted by their manipulation. And through it all, I kept my composure, appearing polite, subdued, even grateful, while inside a quiet storm brewed, a storm that would soon become unstoppable. The SUV remained in the driveway, gleaming under the sun, a constant reminder of what had been stolen. But I no longer saw it as lost. I saw it as a tool, a symbol of the injustice I would right, not through force or confrontation, but through the undeniable power of my growth, my dignity, and the subtle guidance of Grandma. And I knew the moment was approaching when the scales would tip, when my parents would see the truth not just in words, but in the undeniable presence of a daughter they had tried to diminish. When my sister would understand that possession without respect was meaningless. Revenge was no longer a plan. It was in motion, slow, inevitable, and beautifully silent. The day had been planned perfectly, or at least perfectly enough for the kind of subtle justice Grandma favored. She had invited the whole family over for a casual Sunday gathering, the kind that always seemed ordinary but was, in reality, carefully orchestrated by her knowing hands. The house smelled of baked bread and fresh flowers, and the SUV gleamed in the driveway, a silent witness to every stolen moment and every quiet victory I had claimed over the past weeks. I entered the living room with a calm I had worked hard to cultivate. My parents were bustling about, chatting with extended family, entirely unaware of the undercurrents ready to sweep through their carefully controlled world. My sister, perched arrogantly on the edge of the couch, shot me a smug glance. I returned a serene smile. Inside, the storm that had been brewing for weeks burned quietly, ready to ignite. Grandma called everyone to the dining table, her eyes twinkling with the mischief of someone who knows a secret they alone will reveal. "I have something to say," she began, her voice warm but commanding attention. The room fell silent instantly, the usual chatter fading as all eyes turned toward her. "I want to talk about gifts," she said, smiling at me first. "Gifts given with love, and gifts given with intention. A few weeks ago, I gave my granddaughter here a gift, an SUV, not because she asked for it, not because she needed it for convenience, because I wanted to honor her hard work, her dedication, and her heart. It was meant to celebrate her, not as a tool for favoritism or comparison." I could feel the room shift. My parents froze mid-conversation, their smiles faltering. My sister's jaw tightened slightly, her eyes darting toward the SUV in the driveway. Grandma's gaze swept across everyone, calm but unwavering. What happened after that gift was given was unfortunate. Decisions were made without consideration for fairness, decisions that favored one child over another, not based on merit, but convenience or preference. That was not the intention of this gift, and it does not reflect the love behind it. My mother's lips parted slightly, a feeble protest dying on her tongue. My father's fingers twitched nervously against the table. Even my sister looked uncomfortable, sensing the moral weight pressing down on her. Grandma turned back to me, and her smile softened. "But what I've seen over the past weeks has been remarkable. My granddaughter has handled this situation with patience, dignity, and quiet strength. She didn't lash out, she didn't demand attention, or throw tantrums. Instead, she let her actions, her achievements, and her character speak for themselves. And let me tell you, those actions speak louder than any gift ever could." I felt a rush of warmth and relief, a validation deeper than any material reward. Every scholarship I had earned, every moment of composure, every subtle strike of justice was recognized, and more importantly, recognized by the one person whose opinion mattered most. Grandma then turned to the SUV, parked proudly outside, and waved her hand toward it. "And as for this car, it was always meant for her, and now, after seeing the grace with which she has handled this situation, I am officially reaffirming that it belongs to her, not as a prize for revenge, but as a rightful acknowledgement of her perseverance and integrity." The room was silent. My parents, usually so composed, were speechless, caught between guilt and astonishment. My sister's eyes widened, the smugness replaced by a flush of embarrassment. Grandma's voice, gentle but firm, delivered the final note. "Let this be a lesson not in gifts, but in respect. Love cannot be measured by possessions, and favoritism cannot hide the truth of character. Actions define us more than anything else, and today, we are reminded of who truly deserves recognition." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I kept my composure, smiling at Grandma with gratitude that words couldn't fully capture. My parents sat mute, their attempted control utterly undone, confronted not by anger or confrontation, but by undeniable truth and quiet justice. My sister's shoulders slumped slightly, the SUV suddenly feeling less like a symbol of victory and more like a reminder of her own entitlement. I realized then that revenge didn't need to be harsh. It had been served through dignity, through patience, and through the subtle, perfect orchestration of someone who truly understood the heart. Later that evening, as the guests left and the house quieted, Grandma pulled me aside. "You've grown so much," she whispered. "Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's patient, it's elegant, and you did it beautifully." I hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of the past weeks lift, replaced by a deep, unshakable sense of validation and justice. The SUV was mine, but more than that, my Respect was restored, my dignity intact, and my parents had learned, without words, that love and fairness could not be ignored. In the end, the car had never been just a car. It was a symbol of respect, recognition, and the subtle power of quiet strength, and that was something no one could ever take away again.